thank you all for coming and showing up in our community in this way. It's obvious from you being here that you want to be caretakers of our space. To that end, I would like to acknowledge that Nelson County is a part of the ancestral homeland of the Monacan Nation, who has a long and ongoing history of care and stewardship of the land here. We are lucky tonight to have two representatives of the Monacan Nation here joining us with their insights. I will quickly mention that this summer saw the 5-year anniversary of the cancellation of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline come and go. The successes of our community-based efforts to protect property rights in that fight are a strong reminder of how important it is to work together in our communities to support our collective futures. As far as how the program is going to go tonight, we're going to start hearing from our speakers, and then we will take a short break and collect written questions. So there are little strips of paper out front, and you may already have some. We're going to collect those during a break, and when we come back, we are going to have a moderated discussion of those questions. So as we get ready to hear from our speakers, please silence your phones, and also I would like to make everybody aware that the floors, particularly in the back of this room, are very squeaky when someone's speaking. So tonight's discussion is focused around water in our county, where it comes from, how it's used, and what does the future supply look like for us, and what we can do to ensure that future Nelsonians can enjoy the same privilege of abundant water that we do. It is worth noting that the county is in the very early phases of working with DEQ and the Regional Planning Unit to update a regional water supply plan. This is required by 2029. It comes in response to our region's relative abundance of water being called into question as localities east of Interstate 95, really downhill from us, are being forced to transition from groundwater wells to alternative water sources, often surface water. And this is due to declines in the Potomac aquifer. The Central Virginia Planning District Commission is leading our plan update and is in the process of submitting applications for grant funding to fund this work. So this is in the very early stages. It's still something that some of us may be able to get involved in if we want to. So with no further ado, I'm going to start by introducing our moderator for the evening, Ann Coates, and then she's going to take it over from there. Ann has over 25 years of land use management and environmental planning experience on private land, as well as working with local, state, and federal agencies. While she's spent years working in California, she is a Virginia native. And she returned to Virginia in, I think, was it 2017, Ann?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And since then, she has been at the helm of the Thomas Jefferson Soil Water Conservation District as their executive director. She joins us tonight to moderate our panel. And before you do that, Ann, I'd like to ask you to share a little bit about what the Soil Water District has been doing for us.
That's a pleasure. Well, thank you all for having us, and I'm glad to see that I've got David Collins here, one of my board of directors, who you all probably know as well, so if I miss anything, David, let us know. For many of you who don't know, soil and water conservation districts represent 98% of the United States. There are 3,000 soil and water conservation districts nationwide. There are 47 in Virginia, and the one that covers Nelson County is called the Thomas Jefferson Soil and Water Conservation District. We also cover Fluvanna, Louisa County, Albemarle County, and the city of Charlottesville. We have the second largest geographic district in the state and the second largest number of employees. We have 9 dedicated specifically to helping with farms for agricultural projects that want to do water quality improvement. And then we also have a dedicated staff that does education for children and adults, as well as a residential program as well. We've got a lot of handouts in the back, on that back table, including copies of our annual report. And there's lots of great statistics in here. So I'm going to leave it with that for the moment, Mary, because I don't want to, I could go on. I love districts. I could probably talk about our district for hours. So with that, Mary, you were going to give me that.
It's right next to the...
Did you hand me that one? Oh, there it is. All right, so I'm going to introduce the others. If I can get up on my knees. All right. And I also forgot my hair days. So Thank goodness for microphones. All right, first I did want to introduce David Collins. David is a director, as I said earlier, on the board of directors of the Thomas Jefferson Soil and Water Conservation District since 2003. He resides in Nelson County with his wife. Originally from South Carolina, he has been a Virginian for about 40 years. He attended and received a Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering and is licensed as a land surveyor and professional engineer and has his own office in Nelson County. He lives along the Rockfish River and is a member of the Virginia Association of Land Surveyors and the American Society of Civil Engineers. Next, I would like to introduce is Robert McSwain. Robert has served for 8 years on the board of directors for the Nelson County Service Authority. He has had a lifelong interest in water and other natural resource issues. Before moving to Nelson County, he served as the Economic and Commodities Officer in the U.S. Foreign Service. He has worked on a variety of national and international issues dealing with natural resources such as the law of the sea, tropical timber, agricultural products and markets, and mining. He belongs to several organizations that work to protect water in places that include the Chesapeake Bay, wetlands, rivers, oceans, and their biodiversity. So I've got 2 more, and then we can give a round of applause, quickly maybe, for our folks, and then we'll move on. As Mary mentioned earlier, we have 2 representatives from the Monacan Nation, John and Michaela. John Pierce has managed the Monacan Indian Nation's environmental program for nearly 2 years. In that time, he has generated a tribal integrated waste management plan, including a composting program and recycling, and has written a priority climate action plan that focuses on forestry and energy efficiency. The next policy initiatives for the tribe center around surface drinking and water quality, forestry, and regenerative agriculture. Michaela Branham, did I get it right, is a member of the Monacan Indian Nation also, and now works for them as their historic preservation manager. Michaela achieved her bachelor's degree in history, education, and graphic design from Ferrum College, and is currently working to get her master's in nonprofit leadership from the University of Lynchburg. She is currently working to repatriate artifacts and ancestors for the tribe. So with that, correct Mary, am I done with the introductions? And then, so each person is going to speak. David, I believe about 10 minutes, also each 10 minutes, and then I think we have 15 minutes, total of 35 for each of you all to talk about your topics. And then Mary, there'll be a Q&A afterwards, after we take a break. All right, so I think hopefully all your microphones are working. And David, I believe if you are comfortable starting first, we'll start with you.
Can y'all hear me? Okay. I should apologize initially. I'm not a good, comfortable public speaker. I was asked to fill in for Dick Whitehead. He was intending to do this and got called away. I've dealt with a lot of this for most water issues for most of my professional life. Usually it's been an issue of managing the water that was running off of a site. You build a roof, now you've got water, what do you do with it? And so we designed basins, that's the easy ones, that were intended to go dry in between rainstorms. So all of that water that runs off of that roof or that hard surface, whether it's a parking lot or whatever, compacted soils, is now in a channel, and within hours, days, it's in the Chesapeake. That water does not tend to infiltrate our soils because it runs off too quickly. So with that, some of the questions that were posed to me is, where does Nelson's water supply come from? And the short answer is it's rain. That rain, if it can get in the soil and transmit to deeper layers, that can eventually be picked up in a well or come out as a spring or whatever. But that's only the short answer. The water supply that Nelson provides as public water is in the Arrington, Shipman, Schuyler, Lovingston, and parts of Wintergreen. Most of that is groundwater. It's either been pumped from a well. There is an impoundment, a lake that water is cleaned up and put into a pipe system. But except for that surface water, most of our water for the entire population comes from groundwater. I mean, eventually groundwater, anyway. The geology of our county, we have thin soils and rock layers. The rocks, I mean, we talk about layers and people, you know, the pictures we saw as students were these flat layers. Well, hardly any of it's flat. I mean, those layers have been turned on their side, they've been turned upright, they've been folded. So when you start to drill a well, if the layers are lying this way, you drill down, you intercept these porous layers or the cracks in between the rocks. If the layers are turned on in and you try to drill into the middle of a pretty impervious rock, you're not going to get any water in that well. So the driller will move over and try to hit a different well. Well, in some areas, you have to go a pretty good distance to start hitting layers that have water infiltrating to those cracks. So how does that water, well, let me back up. So we talked about that water as an aquifer, and I tend to think of aquifers as being areas that have porous soils, porous gravels, more like you see along the coast, the tidewater areas. Our water is not really like that. It's contained in those same cracks that I was talking about. And just drilling deeper doesn't necessarily get you into those cracks. That's what the driller is trying to intercept. So another question, how do we know, do we know anything about how that groundwater replenishment tends to happen in our county? And the water, I mean, it's going to rain, then water gets into the soil, then it keeps seeping deeper and deeper into the rock layers, into the cracks. That's when the well can pick it up. Or a spring. You know, that is really where these layers maybe hit, that are water-bearing layers are hitting the ground, coming to a ground surface, and then they're bleed out, if you will, bleed out onto the ground, into a channel, into a creek. That replenishment can really be, I mean, I guess I tend to think of groundwater being limitless, but it's not. It is affected by droughts. The water that gets into our wells could have been rainwater months ago, just a few months ago. I mean, it could be years. It could take years for that water, that drop of water to go through all that it has to go to get to your wellhead, but it also could be months. And so we have a dry, lasting dry period, a drought. Our water surface elevations in our wells, in our creeks, I mean, we see it in a creek easily, or in the rivers, we see the water level drop. Well, that's because the springs that have been feeding that water course are drying. I mean, the water has, no longer surfaces at that spring head. So I'm getting out of order here in a lot of parts of it. We talk about aquifers, that it is still considered an aquifer, the water that gets in our rock layer cracks and crevices. It does have a surface. It's not necessarily in our heads, it's not necessarily downhill, because if that water is in a crack that is contained, it may be literally under pressure and can be forced out of the ground through a wellhead. So it's not, when you start talking about water in that crack system, it's not that it's just moving down, it's moving to a lower pressure gradient, whatever that pressure gradient is being controlled by. If it's a confined layer, if it's purely, it could be just an open surface that is unconfined, and again, it has to intercept your wellhead to be able to get into that wellhead. So we start talking about the water surface level, and it's not going to be it's not, in a lake it's flat. I mean, it's this elevation and that elevation are the same, or practically the same. But in underground, that water level, that water table, could be moving up and down. It definitely, once it gets to the wellhead, it is going to tend to drop to go to that low point in your well, whatever that is. So if my well is here and the neighbor's well is here, and I start pumping a lot more water, well, that water level will dip down. Well, it may also start dipping down to my neighbor's well. And so the more water I pump, it may be that it's going to lower his water table. You have different depths of wells, and depending on how they are oriented in that crack system, you may well take all the water that's in that local aquifer around that system of cracks. As an example, I have 2 wells on my property. We built our house in about 85, 87, something like that. They drilled a well. It was 186 feet deep. After about 3 or 4 months, we were only getting a half a gallon a minute. So they came back, and in a distance of about 200 feet, they drilled another well. I'm sorry, I misquoted. The first well was 327 feet deep. I remember the numbers, but off on the order. So they came back and drilled a new well. It was 186 feet deep. I've never been able to pump that one out. And so it in my head anyway, it's not the same local water system. I mean, it may be connected to my neighbor's well up at the end of the road, or it's in our system of water. There's really no real way to determine what the water availability is until you have drilled that well or you have intercepted that spring or whatever.
Well, David,
Yes.
I know that we could have probably that topic at least for an hour or more, right? And obviously, people get entire degrees on just that subject. So
Moving on.
it's very complex, and I certainly know that we're going to have a Q&A session. So if you all have more questions for David, we can ask.
I think David's actually going to have to step out for the question.
Oh, that's right.
But we have lots of resources.
That's
and
right.
I think hopefully everybody got a handout on the way in that covers some of the hydrology of Nelson that David was talking
That's
about
right.
with the fractures and things like that.
And I can get a hold of David, because he's one of my board members. So if you all do have any questions for him, I'll have my business card in the back also. And if you want to follow up, we can make sure we get you some more information on that. So.
And that handout is actually a good one to read. Going back to the soil water district, some of what we do is help provide BMPs, best management practices, and some of those are, most of those are designed to take that water that we're using, and instead of letting it run off down the hill, whether that's because of water from our roof or our driveway or whatever, we are taking, with those BMPs, making systems that will help push that water back in the ground. And that's what we need to do. I don't know, with new construction, it's an easier thing to do because you can build it as you build the driveway or as you build a roof. But you can do it in your own yard. Rain gardens are an excellent example for that. We have a lot of BMPs. Those are things to ask Ann about or look at these papers that she brought.
David, thank you for coming. I know that Mary wants, I think the timekeeper told me to move on to the next one.
Very good.
But I know that we can follow up with you later, and we'll definitely appreciate you being here.
Good.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think Mary has Robert to speak next, and then John McKelly. Thank you. And again, about 10 minutes.
Yes.
Just,
Yes. Okay, I'm on the board of the Nelson County Service Authority, and I'm just going to give you an overview of what the Service Authority has or does, and then I'm going to go through some topics. If any of them interest you, you can write a question, so we can't go into all of this. First off, the Nelson County Service Authority is a public body that was created by the Board of Supervisors in 1986. It is governed by 5 citizen members, I'm one of the board members, who are appointed by the Board of Supervisors. The authority has 1 part-time and 23 full-time employees. The authority provides public water and sewer services to the unincorporated communities of Wintergreen Mountain, and Lovingston, Shipman, Colleen, Schuyler, and Gladstone. The Piney River system is owned by the county, but we operate and maintain it. The authority's infrastructure consists of, I know it's a little bit of a list, but 4 water treatment plants, 4 wastewater treatment plants, 9 storage tanks, water storage tanks, 4 pressurized bladder tanks, approximately 85 miles of water line, 65 miles of interceptor sewer lines, 31 pump stations, a raw water reservoir, 10 water wells, and a total of 381 water hydrants for fire protection. In 2024, there were 2,964 water connections and 2,568 sewer connections. Potable water is provided to Lovingston, Shipman, Colleen, Piney River, Schuyler, Gladstone, Wintergreen Mountain, and a community in Tye River. Sewer service is provided to Lovingston, Colleen, Piney River, Schuyler, Gladstone, and Wintergreen Mountain. This water and wastewater infrastructure is essential for any future growth and development in Nelson County. That's the main message. It's not it's a dynamic thing that has to change over time. The county's comprehensive plan outlines policies for future land use. It's a very good resource for getting a general overall picture of the county, and water is one of the chapters. Most of the residents in the county are on private water wells and septic systems that are greatly influenced by geology, soils, and topography. We provide public water and sewer services, but Aqua Virginia provides the private service that's in Stony Creek. The major constraints to public utilities are financing of large capital projects and the level of fees for service to customers. Our rates tend to be a little high, but we're a very small system, and it's a not-for-profit deal. Inflation in construction costs is already affecting the economic feasibility of projects. In addition, there are regulatory costs from government agencies to prevent negative environmental impact from any new projects. However, the government also provides some financing in the forms of grants and loans. Hopefully they will continue to. As an example of rising costs, the new Wintergreen wastewater treatment plant was estimated to cost $12 million in 2015. That's when we started the process. The plant is nearing completion, but now the costs have risen to $17.8 million. Quite a jump. The authority has no taxing power, and revenues are solely derived from customers who pay for services. Okay, now my list. So these are just some of the items that we've worked on and recently and talked about. And if any of them particularly grab you, you can ask a question. We did have a sewer rate increase this year, 15% increase. We have a good partnership with the county. And the county, which owns the Piney River system, is now raising the rates on Piney River. They hadn't been raised since 2013, so they've got a long way to catch up with where the Service Authority's rates are now. But they're trying to kind of close the gap a little bit, but that's a county issue. They're also involved in the possible water supply from the Larkin property, which the county owns. That's a property just around the high school, basically. Let's see. Our Wintergreen wastewater treatment plant should be completed this year. As I said, it was $17.8 million. It's funded by a VRA revenue bond through the Department of Environmental Quality. The Schuyler wastewater treatment plant is $5.2 million, funded by the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. The Lovingston sewer line replacement project is $4.1 million. The money came from the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. It will probably have to increase a little bit more in value because we've found a lot of this stuff is in the ground, is unknown where it actually is, and we actually found more manholes in Lovingston than where our main plant is that serves Lovingston, Colleen, and Shipman. It has a reservoir, but it's been silting up since it was built, and we've had to spend this year the first go-around on dredging. This year's permit, I think it was 5,000 cubic yards altogether, but we didn't quite get that much. $388,000. That's just some examples of where the money comes from. We borrow, and we have to pay off those loans. And we have a substantial debt, and we're always coming to the county wanting more money for something or other. I wanted to also mention that there's the Region 2000 Water Planning Study. There's an old one that, last version of it, I think, was 2011. They finally are going to do a new one, and it's just started the process, and the county is the representative on the Central Virginia Planning and Development Commission for this project only. We do everything through Thomas Jefferson to the north, but for for the water basin, we're looking at water that flows through Nelson, to the river, James River. Nellis Fair, Aqua Virginia, the substantial increase in rates by the private company. We've had discussions with breweries about how to handle their waste. Our plants can't handle it. Anybody's interested in that, I can talk about biosolids, which is an old topic, but it's still current. There's a number of different areas where we interact with the Department of Health, that's water, and the Department of Environmental Quality, that's wastewater.
Great. Okay, well, thank you. All right, we have a quick round of applause for Robert. And then we've got about 15 minutes between the two of you, and I'm sure you all have done this before, so.
Great. I mean, am I audible?
Mic working?
Let's see. 1, 2, check. There we go.
Here we go.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Hi, everybody. My name is John Pierce. I'm the Environmental Program Manager for the Monacan Nation. I'm relatively new to Amherst County and Virginia. Actually, I moved here from Pennsylvania in 2021. My background is in regenerative agriculture and environmental policy. I work out in Highland County doing farming and sustainable food outreach in Highland County, which is what connected me with the tribe. So I'm not a tribal citizen, I just advocate on behalf with the federal government, which I'll get into a little bit after this. But Katie, you want to introduce yourself?
So I'm about the complete opposite. I grew up in Virginia. What else did you say? I just started with the tribe. I am a tribal citizen. I grew up around Bedford County, then moved to Madison Heights and Amherst. My degrees in history, so environmentally wise, I know absolutely nothing. However, I can give the historic side of why water is important, at least.
So yeah, I think we'll probably just do a little bit of back and forth throughout this where we want to jump in, but I bring up my background to say, and I guess, who all has heard of the Monacan Indian Nation? Okay, nice, a lot of hands.
At least some of you guys.
How many folks have been to the powwow or the museum?
Oh, I see a couple.
Okay, great. So we've got some folks in the room. That's great. I like to check because everything that I've learned about the tribe has been in the past 3 years, basically, or since moving to Virginia, especially. We had some visits to the museum in 2021 and 2022, and I just bring that to. I feel like that hopefully makes people more comfortable to ask questions, and I'm coming at this as somewhat of a newcomer, so there's no wrong question.
And I grew up with it, so same thing. There's no wrong questions. I can answer anything.
So yeah.
Tribal-wise. Tribal-wise.
I guess just to start, I can do a quick overview of tribal history. Again, this is something that could be an entire graduate program thesis, but the tribe has, of course, been in central Virginia and Piedmont west of the fall line. The archaeological record dates back at least 10,000 years. It's likely much further back than that as well, but that has been, the tribe's land base is, of course, in Amherst County, which is south of here, and the tribe received federal recognition in 2018, so we were in a group of 7 tribes in Virginia that were, six tribes were federally recognized in Virginia. There's 7 total in 2018, and that process since then has just been building programs and getting our federal and tribal government aligned with federal funding and figuring out how to take advantage of those funds. As a brief environmental program overview, I operate 3 grants from the US EPA that are directly set aside by the EPA's budget every year for tribes in each region. So we have our primary bread and butter grant, which is a GAP grant, General Assistance Program, which is available for all tribes. And then we also received, you mentioned the CPRG grant, Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, which deals mostly with forestry and renewable energy, and then a grant specifically to tackle a dam rebuild on tribal land that's holding back a lake that we want to use for recreational and cultural purposes. The goal of our program, and this sounded pretty similar to what I intuit Nelson County, Friends of Nelson County's goals to be, is to preserve the environment, forests, fields, waters, and sky of the Central Virginia Piedmont for future generations. And of Monacan people, but also of our neighbors. So I think that is a huge part of all of the work that we're doing. I think I can mention Bear Mountain as just the cultural heart of the tribe. That is where the tribal museum is, the tribal hall.
I grew up around there.
Yeah, grew up, like we were just talking with Allison Steele about the great playground there.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, if you've never been out to Bear Mountain and to the tribal museum, I would highly recommend it. It's where I got my start, and just really, really great place to learn more about the tribe.
If you're history nerds, I highly recommend the museum. I love going, even though I've been there over 1,000 times.
You learn something new every time, and depending on who's there, it's really phenomenal. So that is the heart of the tribal community in Amherst County. Of course, there is also the Rasselbeck site, which is the historic capital of the Monacan Confederacy. We can get into that a little bit later. That's out in Fluvanna County at the confluence of the Ravenna and the James River. I want to just talk briefly about tribal land. The tribe has rematriated about 1,500 acres of forest and pasture in Amherst County, so that is land that's being operated and stewarded by the tribe. About 1,000 acres of that is forest, all of which is part of my environmental program. So I do everything from like wells and septics for tribal citizens to broader land use planning, and then I get brought in on emergency planning and all kinds of other stuff, transportation planning, agricultural, natural resources, all that good stuff. So we're in the same broader watershed as Nelson County, but a drop of water that falls in Lovingston is going to reach the James through the Tye River, which is a little bit downstream of us. I think what else did I want to mention about my overview? I think that's it for now. But do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so to go into the water a little bit more, there's a reason why that we want to protect the water. Specifically, historically wise, if you look at many archaeological sites, you'll see that there's often a river and a hill and a village right in between. Why? Because the river is a good protection as well as the hill. And when we look at Rasselbeck, it's actually in between two rivers, which again, even more protection. Not only that, but the James River was a huge way for us to stay connected with other tribes and trading. We all need trading. And then of course, survival. Water is life. Everyone drinks water. Everyone needs water. And not just as drinking, but it also holds fish. So we have food as well. So it's a huge life source for us. I wanted to mention that a little bit.
That's great. It's a source of renewal too. I think there's a lot of, I was reading this morning actually, there's a lot of similarity in the way that in the traditional indigenous conception of water as a flowing but powerful piece of the landscape that also carries a spirit with it. There's a lot of just importance placed on that relationship to water as not only a food source and a travel method, but
the spiritual connection to it is important as well.
So we were asked a little bit about data centers. That is a huge topic for all of the 7 tribes in Virginia, and we're specifically that we're not seeing them yet. There's one, I think, in talks in Concord.
There's a few.
There's a few that are in talks that we're keeping a very close eye on. But as they kind of creep down from Northern Virginia, where I think is the highest population of data centers in the world, we're definitely going to want to be on alert for those. They have a lot of implications for not just water quality, but land use. Noise pollution. There's some evidence that they maybe don't create as much jobs as people say they're going to. We can get into that as well if we have more questions later. But as far as our current and near-term environmental program goals, currently this fiscal year that just started in October, I'm writing a surface water quality plan, working with the EPA to develop that after kind of attending some trainings. I've been that's the major deliverable of my primary grant for the next upcoming year. So we're hoping to start a surface water quality testing program out on tribal land to test the waters and streams regularly and get a baseline of information on what exactly is going on in the water. We have a lot of agricultural neighbors, and just want to make sure that our water stays pristine and clear so that tribal citizens can continue to use it for fishing and recreation and spiritual purposes. Specifically, there's a lake on the property called Hummingbird Lake that's right downslope from the powwow grounds, and that's a huge, we're putting a lot of our hopes and dreams for our environmental program on that lake. Yeah, on the whole property, yeah. So it's about 1,300 acres of former dairy farm, known as Laurel Cliff Farms. That was, if you're local to, or familiar with farms in Amherst County, that was a big one. The tribe acquired that property in 2021 for powwow grounds, but it quickly kind of became clear that there was a lot more potential to develop agricultural programs that are in line with our soil conservation goals, our carbon sequestration goals, our plant, all of the things that we want to do with that land, building community, building food networks for tribal citizens and for the broader community. Food bank that earlier this year lost funding from USDA, the local food purchase agreement grant. I don't know if I remember that acronym correctly, but the LFPA grant, trying to rebuild and provide food for the food bank, not just for tribal citizens, but for anybody that is open to the public. Yeah, so those are just some very broad goals. We can go into deeper questions. Feel free to reach out, but I can keep going on here.
I mean, you did mention powwow on Laurel Cliff, which it is so amazing to have your own powwow on your own land.
Yes.
It's amazing. We no longer have to rent the land to have a powwow.
Yes.
We get to be on our own land.
Yeah, it's been really special to watch that relationship develop and the powwow get bigger and bigger year after year.
It's getting bigger.
The best part, I think, or one of my favorite parts, is that Bear Mountain is visible from the powwow grounds and the drum circle, so you can really get the feeling of that.
Full experience.
Yeah, you can see High Peak and Bear Mountain. So why are we up in Nelson County talking about this, I guess, would be another question. This, of course, the tribe operates, and the base of operations has been Amherst County for the past 200 some years, roughly since the 1830s. A tribal elder or tribal ancestor purchased land on Bear Mountain that slowly over the years was sold off to different parcels. So it's a much smaller parcel of land than it was in the 1830s. But that migration is not, migration from the eastern part of the state and the central eastern part of the state was kind of a strategy, a successful survival strategy for the Monacan community. They were able to, rather than, there's kind of a myth of dissolution, or that there was not how did I put it in my notes? The disappearance narrative of tribal people, there's kind of this idea that they maybe are not here anymore. I want to bring that conversation into the present. There is an active community of Monacan people still living and working in this region, and to further the environmental goals that we all should share. I mean, it's a shared resource. I think where was I going with that? As far as drinking water, we do have, I've been getting a crash course in drinking water programs, which is not my background. We have a 20-house utility. It's a pumped well utility that operates. It's mainly tribal citizens, but it's also that we've had a large upgrade to that. It was built in the 70s and just reaching the end of its lifespan. So that was a big project over this summer that's finally finishing up. I guess as far as if I want to add anything else about the cultural significance of water before we quickly get into Rasselak, I think just the species that come from water are really some of the most iconic things that you think of when you think of tribal communities. I have a bear on the tribal seal here. I like to wear these out. I mean, bears, fishing all through the winter. And there's, fish, duck, eels, arum, cattails, beaver, turtle, goose, all other water species. They're things that thrive when the water is clear and when they're able to use the water resources just like we do. So being able to protect all of those species and all of that cultural knowledge that comes along with that is a huge part of what I do when I interface with the community and when I ask council and chief for what our program priorities are.
So we both mentioned Rasswick, and I feel like we should explain what that is. So it was actually the capital of the Monacans back in the day. It's located between the James River and the Rivanna rivers. It was basically the center of all political, cultural life. It was a trade center. But we mention it because in 2014, the James River Water Authority, and I'm probably going to shorten it to the JRWA, just to make it a little easier, but they proposed to build a water intake and pump station at Rasswick to supply water to Fluvanna and Louisa counties. And then from 2016 to 2019, the Monacans actually opposed the plan because of the risk to burial grounds at Rasswick. And as well as that, 12,000 other people submitted comments against the project as well. So the public recognized it wasn't great for Fluvanna. And then in 2019, the JRWA's archaeologist was then disqualified by the state for misrepresenting credentials, which halted permits at Rasswick. And then in 2020 and 2021, the JRWA started looking for alternative sites to put this intake and pump station. And then in 2022, March of 2022, the JRWA formally abandoned the project at Rasswick and decided to formally relocate it. As well as that, the JRWA, excuse me, also agreed to transfer ownership of their portion of Rasswick to the Monacans. We are still in the process of getting said land. Still waiting to see what happens there. But it was promised to us, so we'll see.
See, we have any time. Do I have time for a quick quote about the Rasswick project? I wanted to share this. It's from our former tribal administrator and current tribal counselor, Rufus Elliott. Who's
My
also,
uncle.
Yes, your uncle. Okay, I wanted to share
My
that.
uncle.
Right. So this is in relation to my beard is hitting the microphone. I'm very sorry. When you stand somewhere and you have the weight of 1,000 years of direct dependency to that one spot, or descendancy to that one spot, it means something to you. I think that's part of the larger conversation for Indigenous communities across the country and across the world who have been denied access to places and are now starting to be able to call back access to these places and stand there rooted in the sense that this is a direct line to the ancestors. And also know that they lived here, they worked here, they worshiped here, and were buried here. It's a very powerful and unique experience. I think Rufus puts it really well there in terms of the importance of that site to the tribe, and that is kind of is just a really good summation of exactly why Rasswick was so important and why we're continuing to fight.
Yeah. But I went over time.
Yeah, well, thank you. No, you all did well. So, quick round of applause. So, Robert, I will start off with one. Do you have one that, okay, so there are three kind of themed questions based on how much water is used by the adult beverage industry. And I think that was actually repeated a couple of times in different words. So if I said that any differently than anybody else asked, you can add on. But generally speaking, Robert, do you know how much water the adult beverage industry consumes for production and or for drinking? Those could be two different questions, right? Because maybe the processing of it takes water.
Like I think we provide water across the street from our office for inside their offices and, you know, like in the restaurant park. But we don't provide them for making beer that I'm aware of. And I know we don't provide wastewater services because our equipment won't handle I mean, technically it's not set up to handle that kind of waste, and it would overwhelm the system.
Gotcha. I'm guessing that's probably not a question for you guys either, right? Nope. Okay. I would assume, and I don't know, that each of those industries probably promote how much they sell, right, in volume. If I owned a business and said, hey, we, you know, produced 10 million cases of beer or wine or cider, there's probably some information out there on that subject. What I don't know is if they publish what it takes to actually process, and those could be two different questions. Since it came up 3 times, Mary, I'll write it down. We can take notes on computer and maybe send some emails out and see if we can't capture that information somehow and send it out. So if you all are on a sign-up list, or if you've got Mary's, if you're part of the Friends of the Email list, we will include that as a follow-up. All right, so Robert, do you kind of know the answer to this question? And if it is, I'll read it out. My well is almost 50 years old. Do wells have lifespans? I'm going to say yes, probably. How can I know whether or not I need to replace it or repair it? Those are pretty common questions, right, for anybody in a rural area that's on a well. I'm on a well. I've had to replace my pump twice.
Well, we don't do residential wells, but we do have a lot of wells, but they're of different nature, and also the water is treated when it comes out of the well, chlorine, whatever. The wells do decline. I mean, we used to have a lot more wells than we do now, and I think I said we were down to 10. I don't know what the previous amount was, must have been about 20 plus wells. Lovingston, that area used to have a bunch of wells, then closed down.
Right, okay.
That's all I can say about that.
Does anybody mind, how many people in here have an interest in knowing that question? Or do you have an answer? Because some of you may have experienced this yourself. Does anybody here have experience?
I would say wells don't go bad unless the water table drops enough that you don't have the capacity you need.
Right.
The only other thing that could go bad is that they get contaminated from a poorly operating on-site septic system. But what I've heard from Dave McGann, local well driller, says the average well depth used to be about 100 feet. It's now averages 300, and lots of 500 and more, and still not getting much of any water.
But that's a question of geology too, so it's complicated to answer that.
Well, it's geology, but it's also lesser in-soak and more runoff, and climate change, rainfall change patterns that you're not getting recharged.
And the demand for usage.
Yeah, we use more water now than, 50 years, 100 years ago, people probably used maybe 25, 50 gallons a day, and they very easily use 100 gallons per person per day now.
It's called electricity pumps.
Yeah, that's part of it.
We didn't get electricity until 1996, and that's when we started pumping out well. Okay, so.
Right, no, that's right. All right, so Robert, these are going to be some questions for you. What, if anything, is being done to get wintergreen, oh maybe not, mountain wastewater back into the underground aquifer? So where does the wastewater go when it leaves the wintergreen station?
Okay,
Do you know about that?
Yeah, let's use the Black Creek wastewater treatment plant. What happens with the waste is processed in various ways and filtered somewhat, but not a lot. And it's treated for the various things you want to take out of it. Then it's what's left after it's been, the aerated water, treated water that's all right is put back into the creek where it came from upstream just a little. And the stuff that's not, but you don't have any ability to put in the creek, and you shouldn't, is the sludge that comes out of that process, which is what's on the bottom. And that is what people refer to when they're spread on fields as biosolids. And in our case, like practically all the outfits I know, we pay somebody to take the sludge, and a lot of it does get spread on fields and all. It's a complicated question in that it depends on where the sludge came from. Nelson County's not too bad. If you were getting sludge from New York City and they were sending it down here by train to Gladstone, which they used to do, there's a lot more stuff in it, including things like pharmaceuticals that people, drugs and stuff, and all kind of things that could have an adverse reaction on the environment and people. But I think by and large, the sludge that we have a contractor is from the valley and they go over there and spread it somewhere. I don't really know where. It is supposedly regulated. It was a big issue back in the around 2005 or something like that here. And because of that, there was some slight upgrades to how it's handled. They wanted somebody to monitor this because the people, Centigrade, I think it used to be, was shipping all this stuff down here and spreading it. There was nobody watching the hen house, so to speak. So they assigned an inspector to look at it. And the last time I even thought about this issue, somebody in Amherst was supposed to cover Nelson County and monitor and check on women's biosolids. Because certainly, if it's safe enough, if it's done properly, it's like many things. And you can't be too close to a house.
Right, well, you've sort of answered that second question, which on the same piece of paper from the same person, it says, is the service authority promoting or discouraging land application of biosolids, sewage sludge, and its potential for aquifer contamination with PFAS and pharmaceuticals, nitrates, and heavy metals? And I think you've kind of answered that question.
Well, yeah, the answer is we don't have a choice. It's got to go somewhere. And that is the most reasonably priced, efficient manner to do it.
Okay. I'm just curious, do you all handle anything? I know you said you had composting going on out there. Is there anything being done that you all know of for application of biosolids or application of maybe processed compost, I assume, meaning from either animal waste and or vegetative matter type?
Yeah, so we're not, I gotta fix my mic, but we're not operating or doing any applications of biosolid at this time, but I think to go back to a little bit of what you were saying earlier is, I think the word permit carries a lot of interest for me, as it's a permit to do something that is in theory probably not positive for the environment. It depends really on, I think, yeah, there's kind of an interesting discussion to be had about that again could be a whole...
Gotta go somewhere, right? So
yes.
Better regulated than at least unregulated.
Sure, yeah. So our composting program, to really briefly talk about that, is just like 3 compost bins that are all vegetation based from our very, very modest gardens. We have about not even a 1/10 of an acre cultivated right now on the tribal government building, and then there's pasture lands and stuff, but those are all just hay meadows.
All right, so I see at least one hand from the audience. I don't have a microphone out there for you, so you're going to have to speak really loud.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about biosolids.
Okay.
Biosolid application is regulated by the DEQ, and but it has to be applied locally. So we have appliers that work in our building department that are licensed and have been trained in terms of application of it. Most of the properties that have applied for biosolid application are, let's see, east and south of 29 around the Arrington. It's still quite a ways from north of the James River, and there's some in Piney River. And I have the information of all the places that have applied. My understanding is that that biosolids haven't been applied in this area for about a year now, and but because places have been approved for it, it still could happen. And the big problem with biosolids is in storing them. If you store them because you can't apply them automatically, then it poses a big problem because they're concentrated in one area. But the other thing is that virtually almost all the lands that have biosolid application permits are contiguous. So it's really like a very large area instead of, that's how it plays out on a map, when in reality you have very small permits that have been approved.
Right. Well, I know there's been a lot of new discussion about the PFAS. So it would be great if you would be able, if you've got any information, you could provide us in a link for what you just described, and then we could send it out to the entire group with any other information that you might have as backup. Thank you very much. All right, so the next question is, what acreage is managed by the service authority? And I guess it says versus wells, but maybe the question is how many acres are managed and then per wells, or how many wells?
Well, I assume what they're talking about is not watersheds, what is it? Anyway, water areas that feed the plants. And we don't probably have as much protected water areas as we'd like. For example, and you'd have to buy the land or do some kind of a public domain thing where you kind of force a right to do something on somebody. But anyway, I would say Schuyler Water Treatment Plant comes from a little pond called Johnson Hollow. The water goes downhill in a pipe, goes under the Rockfish River and back up to the water plant. It's not a lot of acres there. It's only a few, I think. And I have said in the board meetings before, we really need to make sure the surrounding landowners know that they are right next to a water source, and it's something we should ideally look at getting more watershed protection. But everything costs money, and that's the answer. We don't know how much we actually have, I don't think. But it's not as much as it should be.
All right, well, thank you. All right, I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. So I'm going to switch gears, and Robert, thank you. I think I've got some that are a little bit more geared towards the Conservation District. However, I think that I can also convert them into, just right on the back one, please. Oh, did you write on the back?
No, I did.
Oh, is that it? Nope.
Nope.
Okay.
Couldn't think of one. Couldn't think of one.
We just saying.
Okay. Say it.
I wasn't able to think of one.
Oh, you didn't?
I
Okay,
didn't
all right,
have
great.
anything
I
that-
wanted to make sure they didn't miss anything.
Appreciate
All right.
it.
But I think this one, you probably could answer as well. What effort is being done to improve infiltration in the area by increasing soil aggregation in farmed areas, mostly hay and pasture? Then their one is, do you know of any specific restoration projects being done that directly support Chesapeake Bay TMDL? Those, I'm going to be able to answer this kind of with one long answer, I think. Is the Thomas Jefferson Soil and Water Conservation District promoting rotational grazing as a, I think it says rapid, way to regenerate soils via increased aggregation in soak and water storage and increased soil carbon? So those are kind of, I think, combined. There might have been one other along those lines. So yes, we do, not only do we promote regenerative agriculture, rotational grazing, we also can help pay for some of the costs associated with that. So for instance, while we don't cover perimeter fencing, if you know a farmer who wants to do rotational grazing and they need fencing and pasture management, pasture guidelines to divide up the land within the outer boundaries, we can help cover the cost of not only the fencing, but some of the water systems that are needed to help provide water if they're going to be in systems where the cows are being rotated, and as long as they're not drinking out of the public waterways. So no out of the streams, not out of ponds, etc. So we do have funding for that. That is a type of restoration. It also increases soil carbon and helps to infiltrate water into our aquifers and back into the groundwater. So that kind of answers that, I think, quickly from a Thomas Jefferson perspective. But I know that the Monacan Indian Nation with their regenerative agriculture is doing some similar type of work probably. So since you guys didn't have a whole lot directed towards you directly, questions, I thought maybe you could just touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, great. So that is one specific topic that we're looking very closely at. We actually had folks from the Nature Conservancy out earlier in the summer from the Wetlands Program to help us identify potential sites of projects like fencing. We do have a tribal citizen that's leasing about, I don't remember how many acres, but a northern part of the property, probably a couple hundred acres, to do some rotational grazing, and we need to fence all of that area in. So we're looking into that with him. On a broader kind of land scale, looking at the whole of Monacan land, we're also learning a lot about like switchgrass and other perennial, sorry, I forgot the word perennial ground cover that will, in theory, kind of stay in that soil and build the soil up and build the soil biome much better, biomass much better than hay that we're just cutting every year and throwing more fertilizer on to hope that we get diminishing returns. Another point that I did not mention is the timber aspect of tribal land. So about 600 acres of this forest, or no, I think it's about 400 acres of that forest is pine plantation that was from the previous owner. That's, we're coming to that was planted about 15 years ago, so we're coming to the point of harvest for some of those timber plantations, and just thinking about how we want to rebuild that part of the forest on the property, maybe replanting it with native species and things that are a little bit more in line with what it might have looked like historically to Monacan ancestors, while still keeping some of that ability to harvest for sustainable timbering.
Okay. Wonderful. My voice carries loud. I have business cards if anybody wants follow-up questions with the Thomas Jefferson District directly, but hopefully I'll be happy to type up these questions and try to get some answers for you if we didn't cover them tonight.
I will also say that in regard to the infiltration topic and groundwater recharge that David Collins spoke about earlier, there are ways that homeowners, not just ag sites, can do this as well. He mentioned rain gardens. That's an easy term to throw around, but there's lots of different ways to do that effectively, and the Soil Water District has resources for those as well. So thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you all for being here tonight in the audience. We're excited to continue conversations around these topics as we learn more about these things. We have more questions. After the holidays pass us, which they do so quickly, we will be joining together in the new year for some community conversations. We hope to address some of the things that we have not been able to get to tonight in those conversations. Coming back to the energy topic that we had previously, looking at getting some of our area well drillers and a DEQ hydrologist together so that we can sit down and talk with them about these questions that we have. If you're not signed up for our email list already, put your email down on your way out and we'll be sharing information about that as it comes. Additionally, I will say that we are participating lightly right now in a data center reform coalition, but we are interested in people that are interested in this topic joining us to help us digest that information. So please talk to Jill or myself if you think that might be you. Thank you all for coming tonight. Feel free to stay and mingle as long as you'd like.